Welcome to The World Today. I'm Waqas Majeed Khan. Today we're talking about the Afghan government losing control over its territory, and that's according to a US report that is issued by Seeger, which is the US Department of Defense, also the Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction in his report that he gives to the US Congress. So we'll be talking about that. And we'll also be talking about a statement by the CIA chief, Mr. Pompeo, who said that China is a bigger threat to the US than Russia. So we'll talk about the implications of these statements. Let me introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me today, we have, first of all, Major Retired Ahson Bashir Saab with us. He's a defense analyst, and along with him, we have Yasir Masood. He's also a defense analyst. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. Sir, historically, the number of districts that have been controlled or influenced by the Afghan government has been declining since 2009. And the number of controlled or influenced by the militants has been rising. That is according to the official US report that was released on Tuesday. And that more important than that, sir, is the fact that is a cause for more concern that these facts are being kept from the US public. Now, that is very worrisome, and that has been said by John F. Spoko, the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, in his report to the US Congress, sir. Now, having said these things, and then when you put it in the perspective of Mr. Trump's recent announcement of not wanting to talk to the Taliban, do you think this is the right way to go about solving the Afghan issue, sir?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First thing is first that I would say that this is not the right way to do the things. And the second important thing in this is what you have said and quoted. Very important that the long stance of Pakistan today gets proved by no one else other than the US itself, that yes, the Kabul regime sitting in Kabul does not control the entire Afghanistan. That is what we have been crying. That is what we have been saying, that the Afghan regime which is sitting in Kabul does not represent the entire Afghanistan. So the Afghanistan issue is not that simple, that you can only talk about Kabul, who is pinpointing for every doing good or bad towards Pakistan. Now what do they have to say today? They are losing. They have already lost. 70% of the entire area of Afghanistan is not under the control of this Kabul regime. So what is happening is, Waqas, is very important to understand is in Afghanistan, now the Americans are feeling threatened that despite their presence for such a long time, despite the NATO presence also for such a long time, and not listening to what Pakistan has been saying for peace purposes, they were not fully, they were always trying to say to do more stick and carrot issue and all those things, and the statements which came and the Twitter which came on the New Year and all that, that was all having a deficit. It's a trust deficit which was going in a different direction. They were not trying to understand that Pakistan is trying hard to have peace and control, total control in Afghanistan, because it is in the greater interest of Pakistan, and not only limiting to Pakistan but in the greater interest of this entire region. Chinese have given a very glamorous kind of ambitions through One Belt One Road initiative which they have brought in. That has changed the entire mindset of this region. People really want to earn their livelihoods. People does not want to get killed by just not doing something of their own, and it just happens. Just see in last couple of in last 1 week or so, or more than that, what all has been happening in Afghanistan. You know, a bomb blast in a hotel, then a bomb blast in ambulance, and killing hundreds of people out there, innocent lives, going away just like that. Not understanding that yes, Pakistan's stance has to be understood. They must understand, and they should understand for their betterment also, because they are also for this thing that peace must come into, so that they can have a better face to withdraw once they want to. They want to disengage now. They can't be there forever. So they want to go away from there and want to give a better administration out there. So if we're bringing Taliban, Afghan Taliban into the mainstream and giving them that right, if the people of Afghanistan, they want to vote for them and they want them to be in the mainstream politics of the country, why should you try to dictate them something of yours only, which is not the representation of the entire Afghan people? So that is the main issue, that wherever you try to subdue, you try to crush the saying of the commoner, the general public, verdict is not given the that right which they need. So this thing really happens now. The American people are also they have started to understand that yes, what we are into is a grave problem which can become a gravest problem of all the centuries if it turns down towards the US. So the policy of US, which has been in Afghanistan, looks to be coming to an end, which looks to be meeting a total failure out there, because they have not been able to understand the dynamics of ruling Afghanistan or ruling or staying in this region for that matter.
Well, very interesting point you raised, sir, but it doesn't seem that that message has sunk in to the American decision makers, because again, Mr. Trump's statement of not wanting to talk to the Taliban and continuing the military offensive in order to finish this problem, as in his own words, is that going to really solve the problem rather than finding a political solution to the problem? Also, I want to bring this on the record that this quarter the United States State Department of Defense has instructed the SIGAR, which is the Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction, to not release to the public data on the number of districts and the populations living in them that are controlled by the Afghan government or by the insurgents or contested by both. Now, what does that really indicate to you, sir, as an analyst? Why is the American government trying to hide the reality and the facts from its own people?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Waqas, it's a very interesting question in a sense that, you see, we have been witnessing this kind of policy for the last year or so from the US administration. And if we turn the clock back, in 2014, they were almost at the verge of announcing that they are going to pull out the troops from Afghanistan under Obama administration. But then it's a new thought, it's new policies under Trump administration. But the problem is that 16 years on in Afghanistan, there is no solution. Force is not the solution. I mean, this is a reality for the whole countries now, in itself for the Americans as well. They know this for a matter of fact. Now, what is the problem? Americans, they know that political solution is the only way out. Now, the question is why, the same recurrent kind of policies based on belligerent themes are occurring every now and then from the US administration, and then it further fuels to the fire under Trump administration, as we have been witnessing this. To me, it indicates two very important things. One, that US is panicked. They are in extreme panic. That is why time and again they want to scapegoat Pakistan for their failures and fiascos inside Afghanistan. Second, Afghanistan is proving itself to be a quagmire for the Americans. And it is an open reality that Afghanistan has proved to be the graveyard of the empires. Now Americans are badly stuck in Afghanistan. This also indicates that why they are making Pakistan as a scapegoat, because this is also a kind of pressure tactics. They are manipulating, they are twisting the facts and figures against Pakistan, and they are pressurizing these kind of tactics so that they can undermine Pakistan's importance. But they are in a big mistake, because without Islamabad, without the help of Islamabad, peace in Kabul would be a mirage. It's not possible. So US must, give this trust to Pakistan that yes, we have been you have worked as a front ally state for us for so long, and let's reap the benefits of peace in Afghanistan, that you help us out. But it's not happening for Pakistan. Like, they're not taking Pakistan as a true ally where Pakistan can help them out. Second is that overall, you know, US is also, it seems like it is US hegemony is slipping out of its hand because of China's rise, as Ahson Bashir Sahab just mentioned, that China has given a new dimension, a new chemistry to the whole world, that is of win-win cooperation through Belt and Road Initiative. So it clearly indicates that America is not finding any solution. America is stuck there. As a matter of fact, as I just mentioned, that yes, political solution is there, but it's not in the best interest of the US. That's why they're not adopting that route. They're not adopting the route of political solution.
Well, maybe it is in their best interest, but they're unable to see that for the time being, because I think that a political solution would be the interest for all parties, and it would be a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
So that
For
is
all.
that would be good for the US, and it would be good for the entire world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Majid Sahab, I want to bring this question now to you, which is regarding the Trump administration's new policy, its new Afghan strategy, which meant more military pressure. Number of airstrikes has been increased. There are looser rules of engagement for the American soldiers. Yet, these actions are yet to see an increase in the Afghan government's control over its population. Rather, we see the opposite. We see Afghan government losing control further day by day. As the days go by, Afghan government would not last a single day if the Americans were to pull out. So what does that indicate, sir? And how should that message really be taken by the US and move forward?
I think the message has gone very clearly to the US, and the US administration does understand also. But we need to see there is another angle to this entire problem in Afghanistan. They want to get disengaged, as Yasir is saying very correctly, that they want to disengage from Afghanistan, but they are unable to do it at the moment. They wanted to do it once after the Russians crumbled, and the Russians were no more there, and the Russian, USSR was no more there, and they countered a greatest enemy of theirs, and they were very happy, and they just left it. But they didn't go in totality. They always wanted to keep their presence in Afghanistan, and they always wanted to have a small piece of chunk of Afghanistan in total control of them, because they were at that time also seeing the rising power in this region, and that was after the USSR. There is another power in this region, fortunately or unfortunately, and that is China. And Chinese have got totally a different mindset, for that matter.
And a
they
different
don't go for
worldview.
ball of view. They want to share economy. They want to go with the people. They want to go with the countries. They want to check on that. They want to have better economy. They want to go for better markets. They want to extend that trade. That is why their presence in Africa, their presence in America, their presence in Europe, their presence in Africa, now their presence in Middle East also, to some extent, is getting stronger and stronger. So that is where they are feeling, the Americans are feeling totally threatened in this region. So they want to stay in this region, obviously, for not to let these joints get back, which includes Russia as well. He wants to give a better, role to India, because India, they feel that is the only choice with them to have a check on China, for that matter. But it is I think it is a very, very badly planned affair by the Americans, thinking that this region can be crushed into further parts and they can rule this region anymore. They must understand that they have been ruling the world. They still have got very strong economy. They have control in the rest of the world. In so many things, they are very better off.
Well, they have over 280 odd bases around the world.
Around the world, well, that is there. They have a big market of selling armaments and all that. But I think Southeast Asia is no more a fighting ground for them. A battle testing ground is no more for them. That was probably once in their minds, that they need to have a testing ground for their armories and everything they want to check and test. But now the people have realized, no, we want to live as well. We can't live at the helm of whatever America says, and we have to go just blindly and do it what they have to say, and we have to accept them as masters. So now once you are not accepting them as your masters anymore, so you are trying to sit with them on the table and trying to negotiate with them the reasons of their presence here, why the reasons of their engagement in Afghanistan. Why should they be trying to do that? So the message is going very clearly the kind of control which they are losing, it would be much better for them to realize now that yes, of course, they can have a role to play in this region, but that should be positive role, not to pitch someone against someone and to have a controversies, going on in this region. So this gameplay has to now come to an end, because the regional powers and the region itself, which includes Pakistan, Turkey, China, Russia, for that matter, India for that matter also, because the Indians are, I'm sure Yasir would be having a better knowledge on that, they are showing their interest to come and participate and be part of China-Pakistan economic corridor now, because they are realizing that yes, this is going to be the future, and the rest of the countries around them is developing in that way, and they will be going so far ahead that India might be left behind. India would not like to charge on that, whether it may be the interest of America or not, but India has got its own interest also as a very big economy, very big democracy of the world. So they would know that as well. They don't want to get themselves engaged in Afghanistan. They don't want to have boots in Afghanistan. So the control is loose, and for sure. So the Americans have to now have a different doctrine altogether, keeping Pakistan advises, Pakistan's recommendations in view. They must try to have a better charter now to do.
Or a holistic view of the situation.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you see what's happening in Afghanistan, the military aspect of what the Americans are now doing in their new Afghan strategy is also backfiring in the sense that they're alienating the people of Afghanistan, the citizens of Afghanistan, when there are a large number of civilian casualties as a result of American airstrikes, which are purportedly to support the Afghan military forces. But the result is that a large number of civilians do end up losing their lives. And that is not or cannot be good for the US by any stretch of the imagination. What's your opinion on this, this very important factor of alienating the civilian population of Afghanistan as a result of military action?
Yes, you see, Waqas, it's happening the other way around. Because of under Trump administration, there are more airstrikes, and there are about 653 munitions have been done on the surface of Afghanistan. So there are more airstrikes, there are more actions, controlled actions, and
more collateral damage.
And collateral damages. But the thing is, it's not happening in the way, it's not happening in the positive sense for Americans. And that's where I think so they are panicky, because as I mentioned that it is going the opposite what US wants, because they want to crush all these elements by force, and the more they apply the force, the more it is backfiring. So it is an open testimony for the US as well now, that in spite of funneling and fueling these elements by attacking them, it is not going to help Afghanistan, it is not going to help Americans either. Now what's the way out? The way out is that America should play a positive role inside Afghanistan, because they are already their boots are there. And the problem lies that they are completely overlooking the importance of Pashtun majority in Afghanistan, and they are not bringing the Taliban into the mainstream politics, or into the mainstream dialogue process, or into the mainstream peace process. Although Pakistan has been facilitating this peace process of Taliban over the years now. Recently, their Qatar office, Taliban also came to Islamabad, but then again, it did not prove to be fruitful. So US is already there. They know that what is the way out. They know that what to do. But the problem is Trumpian administration, these Trumpian policies are, these are just like maniacal policies for the whole world. And the best example is Afghanistan. You see, in the foreign policy, the first foreign policy, there are this statement which emanated from the foreign policy of US was very interesting to me. Like China and Russia are the challengers for the US. North Korea and Iran, they are the threat for US. And terrorism and extremism is just a concern for US. So you see how things change and twist over time. But the problem is US administration, including Trumpian policies, if they keep on going on this blind alley, the blind alley is that the more they would apply the force execution inside Afghanistan, it will backlash against America.
Right.
So the best possible viewpoint would be that America must realize that all these regional stakeholders, they are very important. The first one is Pakistan, because Pakistan is strategically, we are natural neighbor with Afghanistan. We have the same tradition, same culture. We know them, much better than other countries, because most of the Afghanis, they lived in Pakistan. So culturally we are binded. By religion, we have the same religion. We know the whole mechanism, the whole chemistry, that how we can bring about peace in Afghanistan. And then China as a rising star can play a very pivotal role. Russia is cozying up towards Pakistan. So America should realize that in this multipolar world order, they're injecting this unipolar kind of strategies in this region. That is not going to help anybody.
Well, absolutely, and that is, it's been established that the policies, the Afghan strategy that is now being implemented in Afghanistan will obviously result in more people joining the insurgents and the militants as a result of the military action. But there's one more aspect to it. Major Saab, if you could elaborate on this aspect, which is about the increase of US casualties. A large number of American soldiers are now dying in Afghanistan, and they're fighting over the same old piece of ground with nothing to prove, nothing to show, and it's a stalemate situation. Rather, it is deteriorating against the US and their forces in Afghanistan, sir. So isn't that a concern that the American public would be really concerned about, the fact that a large number of American casualties are now taking place?
Because if you remember, in 2006 and 7, once the casualty rate of the American troops had suddenly increased, and it went so high that the kind of coffins which were going back to America, the American people started to really feel threatened, not only threatened, but they started to come head on with the government at that time as well, that yes, we are not ready to go and lay our soldiers and our people dying. For what cause? They started to basically ask and demanded out of their government to tell them as to why these guys are dying out there.
And I want to add something here, sir. And these are just the casualties that are as a result of the battles that they are fighting against the militants. There's another aspect, and that is insider attacks. The Afghan army turns around, soldiers turn around and start killing their American trainers. And that is also happening, sir. It is also a worrisome situation for the Americans, that the very people that they're going to train are the ones who are turning against them and killing them.
Whenever you try to do something which is unnatural, it is the repercussion of the same. See, there is a natural alliance, and there is a history of these great warriors. As Yasir is saying, it has become a graveyard of the very great empires. So the Afghan naturally do not accept anyone dominating them and trying to rule them. They have to rule themselves, and they have to have their laws and abide by that. Well, that is the rule. That is the reality. One should accept that. That's the reason that despite Americans' presence out there, despite they are making hospital, despite they are having Indians to come and build hospitals there, despite they are having put the filtration plants for water, clean water plants out there, after giving all these things, still the Afghans are not willing to accept them to be their lords, to be their rulers, to be their masters. They can't be the masters, for sure. Well, you can be in the role of a messiah, but you can't be really a master for that matter. So they don't accept you as masters. So the same thing the American people started to ask in 2007 and 8 from their administration, Bush, that yes, why our soldiers are dying there? Why have you pulled them that? What is that reason? What is that cause for which you are going out there? And that's the reason that now again, the American people have started to, have a debate in America. The think tanks are even talking about it. Loudly they are saying, what was the justification of going into Iraq? Once you were saying that there had been weapons of mass destruction, and today that, war-ravaged country does not have anything for that matter. So wherever they have gone because of wrong informations and wrong things they have gone in. So the same thing is happening now in Afghanistan as well, that they've got absolutely no justification to stay out there. They need to hand it over to the Afghan people for themselves to elect, select and rule. and they must go away from there. But what is happening is that they are unable to accept going away from this region, because what they are trying to think or feel is that in this region there is Russia and there is China. So if we don't remain in this region, which they are quickly becoming irrelevant in any way, they are becoming irrelevant, they don't want to do that. They are just looking. So that makes them really very, very perplexed and very confused, as he's saying rightly, that yes, they are totally confused what to do. So that is why they were looking towards India to come and play a better role out there. India refused to send their troops in Afghanistan because India lives in the same region, and we know it. Pakistan has got a natural alliance with Afghanistan. We share 2,600 kilometers of great border with Afghanistan. We are fencing towards our side to ensure that peace returns, and that's a great effort which Pakistan is doing. Pakistan has always lived there. The families live out that side and we live on this side as well. We share so many commonalities. Our culture is same, our religion is same, and so many things. Russians do not have a problem for all these things. China doesn't have problem for all these things. China is offering itself to be in Afghanistan, to have this peace process going on. China has officially offered that yes, we are ready to engage ourselves in this peace process to return, because of the reason that he doesn't say that we want to return peace in Afghanistan and have a better role in Afghanistan, but they want peace in Afghanistan for their economic zones to really grow, and so that this economic activity in this century which has come in this region should grow, because their own investments is threatened because of not having peace in Afghanistan. So they want to link on that issues. Americans are always trying to think negatively about the countries, those who have been very close to them, and that's the reason Pakistan has been hurt by them, by saying that you have not done enough, and the aids and trades and all this money which you are holding for the work which you already got done. So this kind of trust deficit, if they continue here in this region, soon they will have very bad days to come. So I think that the Trump administration now, I think, has started to understand that yes, in Afghanistan there has to be a different kind of strategy, not that strategy which they think of having power and just going into that and trying to dictate them. No, that won't really happen in Afghanistan.
But unfortunately, that's what we're seeing happening,
Yeah.
and that's really, really unfortunate. We hope that there's some sense that prevails and the strategy is altered. Let's also talk about another very worrying aspect of what's happening in Afghanistan. Sigar, the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan's reconstruction, said that despite $8.7 billion in US aid for counter-narcotics, opium production was up 87% in the last year in Afghanistan, and the land under opium cultivation was 63% more, and these are both all-time highs ever since this has happened. So what does that tell us about the situation in Afghanistan?
Well, Waqas, everything is just in a mess. And I would say, I would agree to my colleague's very important point, which is very relevant to your question, that they have gone to different countries, America has gone to different countries for wrong information. I would rather say that many information and the justification and the reasoning was concocted and contrived. Like, look at what happened in the Vietnam War, what they have done in the Iraq War, what kind of bigger mess they have created.
Yeah,
there.
but, and despite that, when you mention Vietnam, when you mention Iraq, despite that, why is it that the Americans can get away with creating all the mess in the world that they are so good at doing it? What's the problem over here? Why can't the rest of the United Nations get together and stop the Americans from taking unilateral actions which are damaging the entire world?
Well, that is what is happening since quite some time now, since centuries now, because that is so strongly embedded and injected in their minds.
After the Second World War.
After the Second World War, that when they have taken the reins of power, they have announced and they have tried to, see the worldview with a different perspective, and that was that we have to strategically divide the nations. Like, for example, when we talk about this whole phenomenon of extremism and terrorism, it was started off in the Middle East, and they were the people, along with the Israel policies, they fueled these kinds of aggression in the Middle East. Then this whole migration of import and export of extremism and terrorism started from there. So when we see that why it is happening, why they don't realize, as you just mentioned, because they believe in zero-sum game, and that zero-sum game is to divide the nations, to create gulf between the different countries, and by doing that, by creating conflicts and by creating confusion and chaos in many parts of the world, then they can rule. That's how they manipulate in different countries, which is, and why they are so much perplexed now, because China has given a new vision which is antithesis to zero-sum game, which is a win-win cooperation, which is like peace and prosperity for the whole region, for the whole world. What is happening, this is the latest manifestation in Afghanistan of their policies, what they have been doing over the years now. Now they must realize, they should realize and they should understand that if they carry on with such policies of disintegration, of creating chaos and conflicts inside Afghanistan or any other part of the world view has changed now.
Right.
The world has realized that this is not the way.
Let's also talk about the strategy and the tactics now being employed by the militants, namely the Afghan Taliban, and now we have another player in the form of Daesh. And it seems, sir, that Daesh and Taliban are in competition to see who is a more destructive force on the planet and who can cause more Afghan casualties, as we've seen in the last week. Do you see a shift in the strategy of these militant organizations? What do you think it signifies, sir?
Well, Daesh and Afghan Taliban are more or less the same, but you are right in a way that they are trying to contest at times also for the area, for the kind of attacks they make and all that, and the tactics. But let's not forget here one very important aspect which you had also mentioned earlier in this program, that the trainers are who? The trainers are the CIA. The trainers are the Americans, and they are training. Just visualize and just see very critically as to how Daesh operates and what are the Daesh, how does it go and how does it do. You find it very close. You find a lot of resemblance in how the American troops, they operate. So the thing is that if you are trying to give the training of that sort, and you are trying to make yourself vulnerable, and also the equipment or the resources you are providing for someone else, but you are unaware of this, that the same can go and turn back against you as well. So that is a game which makes a very, very intriguing game and a difficult game to understand in Afghanistan. However, coming to just a competition between these two, terrorists, terrorist is a terrorist. May it be, Afghan Taliban, if they are trying to do something which is not in connivance for returning of peace, and if they try to do and hurt the normal people, people are going to tomorrow just throw them away. So
Well,
Taliban
that is what
are
we,
never,
that is
never
what we did
involved.
see, sir, because in the early days, just before the US invasion of Afghanistan, the Taliban were in power. And the people were not very happy. The reports that were coming out of Afghanistan at the time showed a very strict regime that the Taliban was operating in Afghanistan as. So the people of Afghanistan were not happy with the Taliban either. So at the end of the day, we want peace for the people of Afghanistan, and it is the people of Afghanistan which are suffering the most as a result of these games that
I think,
other countries are playing in
Waqas,
their territory.
I think we need to understand that what was the percentage of the people, those who were not happy with the rule of Afghan Taliban in the country, and those who were happy with the rule of Afghan Taliban, with the Sharia totally, being implemented in the country for that out there. Today, if you see, the people are really saying, if you have heard, if I am correct, that yes, things were much better during the rule of Afghan, when they were ruling the country. The things were much better, as far as only if it is concerned for Afghanistan only, related to Afghanistan, and not from any other view. Now, this is also a perception probably being created by the invaders, that yes, they were also not happy. People were not happy, even if they get ruled back and they rule it. You see, we have to see it on ground. What is the reality on ground? 70% of the country is still being ruled by them. and you are trying to say that their people were not happy with their rule in the entire country for that matter. How come they are ruling 70%? Why are you not being able to rule 70% and you have reduced them to only 10 or 15%?
Very good
So the
point, sir.
reality on ground speaks for everything. So we must try to realize the Americans' strategy is that they do not try to realize the realities of the ground. They just try to go into there just because of their might which is there. They only go for resources. And the resources are, they went to Middle East, if I am correct, Yasir, that yes, they went for oil.
That's
And
right.
they don't want to use their resources. However, they have got about 20% of the world resources still intact, untouched in there, and that is their strength basically. They want to use the resources all over the world and just finish them off and then go away and just see that. That is what is making them confused by that. The China wants these resources to be judiciously used by everyone at parallel. So my view is that sooner or the later they have to realize that they have to go back to Washington and they have to rule from there.
And their policies are unsustainable.
Unsustainable because all over the world, the NATO is nothing, but it is only them. Their
And
presence.
I'm sure that their European allies are also telling him the same thing, but unfortunately they're not willing to understand. But before we end the program, I really want to talk about the statement made by the CIA chief, Mr. Pompeo. He said that China is a bigger threat to the US than Russia. And further on, he says that China has designated its spies everywhere, including in schools, hospitals, in the corporate world, in order to work against America. Now, that is the kind of mindset that we are now witnessing that is being displayed by the United States. It's a bit of a paranoia and a sort of playing the victim sort of card. Do you think that's the right kind of attitude the Americans, which are the sole superpower on the planet today, should be exhibiting?
Well, the same thoughts were reflected last December by the Trump administration when they came up with their first foreign policy, and they have announced two countries, China and Russia, as their main challengers. But now they are saying that China is probably a bigger challenge than Russia. Now, the point is that let's take this way, let's take for a moment that if China is confronting US policies, so why not? What's the problem with that? If US can do that to the whole world, why can't China do that to the Americans? Because you see, we have to see through the perspective of the international relations. If the reins of power were in the hands of US, now with the economic ascendance, it's the whole worldview, the whole power, it's a power shift to China because of its policies. Now, if it is rising because of its obor, because of its tradition, because of its better policies in the world.
I want to share, Yasir, what the response of the Chinese and Russian foreign offices has been. First of all, the Chinese say that we urge the United States to stop intentionally distorting China's strategic intentions and to abandon the outdated notions such as the Cold War mentality and zero-sum game approach. Otherwise, it will only harm itself and others. That's from the Chinese point of view. I think it's a very succinct and
exactly.
a perfect encapsulation of what America is trying to do. And it is this imperialist attitude which is now alienating the US from the rest of the world, as we are witnessing. And also the Russian response is important to be mentioned here. The imperialist character of this foreign policy is obvious, as is the refusal to renounce a unipolar world and insistent refusal, according to the Kremlin. That's what they had to say. So I think that message should really sink in the American think tanks, and the powers of the corridors of power in the US must listen to that message very carefully.
I think a very befitting response from both Russia and China. There are four important things in this response. One is zero-sum game. The second is Cold War mentality. The third one is imperialistic designs, and the fourth one is unipolar world order. So, if US, I mean, this is just a reflection to the US policies and how, exquisitely explained by both countries, that if they carry on injecting these policies, which has destroyed the world peace for far too long. in
these
the whole world.
And these were the reasons for the demise of the British Empire. Maybe the Americans should take a page out of their book and learn from history.
Yes.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. You heard the conversation, and we urge you to draw your own conclusions from what you've heard. But we also hope and pray that the Americans understand the message that the entire world is trying to give them, which is to let peace, rather give peace a chance. With that hope and on that note, it's goodbye. CPEC brings all the success to the Pakistani nation that we are hoping for. On that note, it's goodbye.